The history has been written about the building of the Washington Monument. But our story is one that has not been told. It begins well over 3,000 years ago and is written in the geometry and measure of the form that was to inspire our national icon. The observation of a crystal sends us to the idea of singularity. And in our presentation, we're going to examine such a singularity. However, it is one of many, similar to these many crystals in the single form. Our observation is of the Washington Monument. It stands in Washington, D.C. in the United States, the capital of the United States. Presented to us after much deliberation by many minds to affirm, in a sense, the greatness of our first president, George Washington. The form itself, like the crystal, is such that the single details to our observation will uncover for us an idea that transcends the limitations of any single mind. Our investigation shall pursue the idea that we have a search for a meaning that is prior to the construction of the obelisk. For this we have to return to Egypt and examine some of the features of obelisks that are found there. At Luxor and Karnak in Egypt on the Nile River, there were at one time what one of the great ancient writers claimed as a forest of obelisks. We are fortunate, since the Washington Monument was built with the general ideas that encapsulate the values of what an obelisk is. In other words, if it is a true form, if it is the form that is the essential obelisk, then we can study the Washington Monument and find out what the ancient obelisks were all about. The measures that we have taken of the base, personally, affirm that there is a single number that can be the driving force for the structure and form and measure of the Washington Monument. It is the number 10. Whether it is 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 100 million, it is still the idea of a unity and a consistent unity within itself. We can, from the number 10, design and generate the Washington Monument precisely. It even is such that, having completed the form of the Washington Monument, if we did not put it in a correct place, it would tell us, no, don't put me here, put me where I show you. And that comes from the form of the major diagonal of the base, which is not exactly square, which gives us the value for the cosine of the latitude on which this obelisk will sit. It is such that it will tell us what it is and where it belongs. I visited the Washington Monument June 21st in 1994. And the object of my visit was to determine where did the shadow of the apex of the whole monument fall to the ground. Where would the sun's shadow show that the obelisk located a point on the ground? And I was not able to do this properly because the shaft is on a knoll. and the ground is sloping away, so I couldn't really get the measurement that I wanted. But I did make a series of marks which I notated the movement of the shadow over a period of about 40 minutes. And it moves quite rapidly at that angle and at that latitude. I measured very carefully all four sides. Two of the sides were just about equal, and the other two sides were plus and minus that measure. So I did find that the base of the Washington Monument in stone is a skewed rectangle. It is not square. And that was my effort to find out something about the base of the Washington Monument. I had already known that the abstraction of the value for the side would be taken from the number 10, and it is that the number 10 as a natural logarithm gives the cubic volume of the pyramidion, and if I divide that by 400, then I get 55.066, which is the length of the side of the base in feet. The pyramidion is 1/10 of the height. Also, we want to see that the relationship that the base side has to the top of the pyramidion is not a simple case of just divide by 10. It is that we ought to see that we have to go through a small process. It is mathematical, but it is geometrical in content. The cubic volume of the pyramidion atop the shaft is a single number in cubic feet. And though it is a mathematical format, it is that the number 10 as the natural logarithm of another number will be 22,026 plus some more, and that is the number of cubic feet in the pyramidion on the top. Now, in order to define the methodology to derive the baseline on the side from that number, all we need do is to divide 22,026 plus by 400, and the number that we derive, 55.06 and some other numbers, is the length of the side of the base. Now follow that from 10 to its anti-natural logarithm divided by 400 is the length of the base side.